Part 111. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 1104. Gretel's treatment method pays attention to precision. What can be done with 1 point of strength, never use 2 points of effort. What can be done with 2 points of effort, even if it takes 2.5 points of effort, he will feel that he is at a loss. Such delicate control relies on solid medical knowledge and understanding of all aspects of the human body's physiological structure and pathological characteristics. 7 years of continuous bachelor's and master's degrees, and more than 10 years of career as a doctor, laid the foundation. On the other hand, it relies on mental power coverage. Carefully, it penetrates deep into the patient's body and guides the healing power. This is not like most healers nowadays, who use 100% of their healing power to scatter 70% to 80% of their healing power. The healing power of one person is at least as good as 5 or 10 of the same level. But to do this, mental observation must be sharp. Failure to penetrate is like a fighter jet that has lost its navigation and the radar in front of the missile is interfered with, causing it to fly around like a headless fly. Greet had been relying on this to treat low-level patients, with no disadvantages. However, this tiger hit a snag. Even if a level 16 high-level monster is sick, its energy is still boiling like lava. After rolling and hesitating under the fur, Gretel's mental power covered it, and each animal hair stood up like steel needles. Relax. Relax, Gretel was sweating on his forehead. He raised his hand and pressed down weakly. He stroked the tiger's head from a distance. I'm here to treat you. I'm not trying to harm you. Look, the elders are here too. If I want to harm you, they won't agree, right? Come on, relax a little and let my mental power go in and take a look. The tiger purred, lowered his head and rested on his 2 front paws. Beside him, Annery Ling stroked the hair on its big head and said with a smile. He knew it when he came, otherwise he would have pounced on you. It's just that high-level monsters will always protect themselves unless they lose all their strength when they are about to die. You just tell him to relax, I'm afraid it won't work. Greet glanced at her and continued to work hard without saying a word. Failed once, failed twice, after failing 5 or 6 times in a row, he turned to the elder and sighed in distress. Elder, what should I do? If I don't succeed, it will be even more troublesome to treat Phyla and the others in the future. There is a 6-level difference between the two sides, and Elder Fahim has no particularly good solution. Go through your collection, take out all the equipment that increases your mental power, and let Greet try again. Soon, Greet was fully clothed. Wearing a silver crown on his head, the thin silver leaves on the crown swayed, and countless fine runes were engraved on it. 2 huge pearls bent over and pressed against the temples on both sides. There was a necklace hanging around his neck, and around a 2-finger-wide chain, strings of gems hung down, draping over his chest and back. 1 bracelet in each hand and 2 or 3 strings of bracelets, but when he felt that it was not enough, Annery Ling took out his arm bracelet and tied it until his arms were shiny and straight. He was wearing an emerald green robe, and there was a brooch on the robe. The gemstone was as big as Greet's thumb. All in all, she was dressed more luxuriously than Cecilla for the banquet. Sarah was eager to try it out next to her. If Greet hadn't been waiting to use it, she would have taken off the set of jewelry and slept with them in her arms. After being fully clothed, Elder Fahim personally applied a lot of buffing spells to Gretel. Then, he arranged the magic circle at his feet, lit the magic incense, and asked him to try again. Communicate with nature, communicate with the forest. Use the power of the entire nature to explore slowly and deeply. Don't be anxious, don't panic, just go step by step. Gretel held the oak staff in both hands, slowly closed his eyes, and called out to the power of the forest and nature. This was healing, and the oak staff didn't rebel, obediently lending its power. This time, all the buffs that can be added are fully added. Greet used all his strength to spread his mental power. This time it was much better than last time. Little by little, like gentle breeze and drizzle, it moistened under the tiger's fur. Go past the hair, past the epidermis, past the dermis, past the subcutaneous tissue, and touch the muscles, superficial muscles, middle muscles, deep muscles. Ah! The steel-like muscles on the demon tiger's body rolled slightly, and Gretel's mental energy bounced out of the ground. It still doesn't work, it's still far from enough. Gretel frowned. I really tried my best. Didn't you kill a level 18 Sky Knight? Anari Lingiki asked. She and Elder Fahim had inspected the body of the Heavenly Knight, and also heard Greet talk about the battle process. Can't you use your mental power to get in? It's possible at level 18, but why can't it be done at level 15? For the level 18 one, the mental power only needs to touch the surface. Greet sighed in distress. That one only needs to touch the surface and throw the relevant spells up. It would be better if the electrocardiogram magic can be attached to the body surface. As for the subsequent attack, there is no need to hold back, and it was Cyrilla who broke through his defense first. This is a patient. Not the enemy. You can't give him a good beating first to break down his defenses, and then think about treatment. Do you want me to break through the defense first? Cyrilla emerged from the other side of the elder. He raised his little fist and shook it decoratively. Should I knock him out first? Ouch! The tiger growled at her. The majestic and deep roar spread in all directions. Even if it was a sick tiger, the forest immediately became quiet. The shrill chirping of cicadas, the croaking of tree frogs, the loud shouts of howler monkeys, and the croaking of deer all disappeared for a moment. It was as if the entire forest was paying tribute to its king. Cyrilla was not afraid at all. She giggled and made a face to the tiger. Gretel rubbed his forehead. Cyrilla, let's not take this path first. Let me think of other ways. Elder, is there any other way? Other ways, the most reliable one is to advance quickly. You are now at level 11, and your mental strength is not strong enough. Even if you advance to level 13 or 14, you won't be in trouble. You advanced last time, when was it? Gretel said nothing. Elder Fahim asked again, and then he whispered. Months ago. How many months? In just a few months, we set off from the Eagle Country. Before coming here, we had just completed the advancement. Elder Fahim held his forehead and sighed. This speed is too fast. Considering Gretel's age, it is almost like cheating. In fact, the elves on Yangju Island, especially many of the elven nobles, relied on drinking medicine and spells to get here, and they were not willing to work at all. If Greet had not published so many high-quality papers. It's not that the spell casting and treatment are all smooth and effortless, and you can even cast spells at a higher level. Especially, not surrounded by the care of nature and the love of the world. Elder Fahim simply thought that Greet got up by drinking medicine just like them. Even so, the advanced methods that Elder Fahim can use basically cannot be used on him. Gretel has advanced so quickly, and his foundation is already unstable, and he can no longer stand it. In his current state, even the transformation spell is ineffective, and he cannot even cast spells in the transformed state. Advancing to level 11, has he memorized all the 6-ring spells, and can he cast the 6-ring divine spells smoothly? Don't go up and down, rush to level 13, you haven't finished memorizing the 6-ring spells yet. Here, let me find some books for you. He returned to the study, flipped through, and pulled out several thick books. Some were in sheepskin, some were in unknown animal skins, some were written on unknown leaves, and some were sealed in stone tablets or crystals, all piled up in front of Gretel. These are books about how to use mental power. Read them all and practice according to them. It may be helpful. If it still doesn't work, let's think of new ways. Greed held this large pile of things and plunged into the room. As a legendary spellcaster and an elf legend with deep accumulation and rich experience, Elder Fahim has a very rich collection. These books teach many ways to use mental power and exercise methods that Gretel had not thought of. There are those who stretch their mental energy into thin threads, as thin as they can be, and then find a place to drill them in. Some cut their mental power into sections, condensed it into sharp cones in front, formed a formation and fired forward, trying to break it quickly. There are those who condense their mental energy into a spiral shape, like a screw, twisting it in bit by bit. There are those who vibrate their mental power and form specific waveforms to offset the opponent's defensive power and take advantage of it. Greed watched with fascination. There are also many ways to use mental power in the secret vault of Thunderhorn, but he felt that his power was enough before and did not spend energy on it. Besides, the magicians in Thunderhorn are all of the energy evocation type, mainly attacking hard, and their mental power is mainly sharp, strong, difficult to attack, and large-scale control. It is not the same approach as Gretel wants to be delicate and light. He gnawed hard at the Elder's collection, chewing one book after another until he felt dizzy and his head felt swollen. On the other side, Elder Fahim was chewing on Gretel's papers and books, but he was also dizzy and his head was swollen. Human Anatomy Atlas. Imaging Atlas. X-ray. B ultrasound. CT. Various images represent various possibilities. Various waveforms of electrocardiogram, their corresponding meanings and symptoms. Atlas of infectious disease germs, penicillium, streptomyces, observation maps of various cells. Greet, you said that if I memorize these cell atlases, I can use my mental power to target the cancer cells you mentioned. The Elder held the atlas, his long white eyebrows tangled together. Why can't I lock it? Maybe you can't see what cancer cells look like. Gretel was confused. The morphological characteristics of cancer cells include changes in cell morphology, changes in nuclear morphology, abnormal mitochondrial morphology, and cytoskeletal disorders. It's a bit difficult to see so many things under an optical microscope. Elder, don't worry, let me think about it, think about what to say. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of pie. A new book. Swallowing the River God, I embarked on the road of cultivating immortality. John, yeah, do you still remember the river god on the Blackwater River? Eaten by me. Crunchy. The author is an old friend. I started a new book with him on my last book, and we tested the waters together. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 1105. Chapter 1102, The Method of Rubbing an Electron Microscope by Dreaming Hands. Elder, I want to learn this. If Elder Fahim wanted to see cells more clearly, then Gretel wanted even more. It is easy to go from frugality to luxury, but it is difficult to go from luxury to frugality. After experiencing the era of electron microscope, it is impossible to be satisfied with the 1 or 2,000 times magnification of optical microscope. Although Gretel had never personally operated an electron microscope or seen the images produced by an electron microscope in his previous life, he had read medical textbooks. Have you seen the map? The accuracy of light microscopy will be surpassed by that of electron microscopy. But there was no way. As an 11th level mage and a healing mage of the plasticity system, Gretel couldn't make an electron mirror by himself. The teacher may have made something similar to an electron microscope. As for senior sister, I don't know how it will progress. However, those who wanted to hug the teacher's thigh were already rewarded with the word "get out." I want to hug my senior sister's skirt, but the physical distance is too far and I can't. Just then Elder Fahim came to the door. Although natural legends and thunder and lightning legends are not the same research direction, legends are legends after all. Greet thought, well, if you don't use it, it will be in vain? He touched the space bag, laid out the generators, transformers, and vacuum tubes one by one, and set them up. With a flick of his hand, one engine landed, holding the handle of the generator, ready for battle. Anari Ling took half a step back, and disgust towards the undead naturally appeared on the elf's pretty cheeks. Elder Fahim smiled, shook his head at his disciple, and turned to greet. What do you want me to see? Elder, please pay attention. Is there anything flying out of the vacuum tube that you haven't sensed? Hey, I know this. I know, Cyrilla was happy. The silver dragon girl's silver blue eyes turned into bright silver vertical pupils in an instant, and she poked her head from behind Gretel's shoulder. Greet waved her hand and nodded to Elder Fahim. Ready, let's go. 3, 2, 1. Go. The dark gold skeleton struggled to shake the handle. There was a sizzling sound, electric sparks flashed, and Cyrilla pouted dissatisfiedly. It's too dark. It's too dark. It's only a little bit darker than the star dome. Greet, please increase the current. This, Gretel turned his head and glanced at Elder Fahim. I saw Elder Fahim frowning slightly, thoughtfully. After a moment, he looked at Gretel. I seem to see it, but I don't seem to see it. Is it because the current is not strong enough? Greet, do you want my help? No, the voltage is not high enough. Greet inhaled, exhaled, retracted the generator, and let the two wires float up on their own. Touched the space bag, took out a superconducting suit and a transformer suit, and pointed at the vacuum tube again. Crack. A level 11 magician, full of buffs and full strength. Although it is much worse than the senior sister, it is much stronger than the level 6 magician at that time in Aurora. Yeah. I saw it this time. It's very strong. Cyrilla yelled. Elder Fahim pondered for a moment and then shook his head. Gretel was a little anxious. Elder, can't you see? If I can't see it, there will be no way to implement the series of plans I have below. Can the little girl see it? Elder Fahim turned to Cyrilla and asked lightly with a smile. Seeing Cyrilla nodding proudly, he pondered for a moment and walked out. Well, Gretel, move your things outside and try again. Wait a minute, I'm ready to call you. As he spoke, he walked slowly outside. 1 step, 2 steps, walked more than 10 meters, turned around and stood still. No matter how he acted, magic power surged under the shade of the tree. Suddenly, a golden dragon that was bigger than Cyrilla's original form stood firmly on the spot. Gretel, do it again. Cyrilla slowly opened her mouth wide and raised her head, her whole face full of surprise. Elder Fahim lowered his head and looked at her, and laughed rumbled. Ha ha, little girl, don't be so surprised. If you live to my age, you are still a legend. Who doesn't have a few dragon friends? Gretel. To be honest, using dragon-shaped deformation to solve the problem of X-ray observation is an idea I never thought of. Gretel started the vacuum tube again. This time, Elder Fahim used his own eyes to really see the X-rays excited in the vacuum tube. With this foundation, Greet submitted a paper co-written by himself and his senior brothers and sisters. Well, when the senior brothers and sisters made him the first author, the acceptance rate was very high. For example, the discovery of a new type of particle far smaller than an atom is about electrons. For example, the properties and magical damage of a new type of ray is about X-rays. Elder Fahim held it in his hand, read it over and over again, and asked Gretel. What do you want me to do? Can you rub the electron flow with your hands? Gretel forced himself to gesture. Use the electron flow to illuminate extremely small objects, such as bacteria and cells. Through the shadow of the electron flow blocked by the cells, you can see what they look like. Elder Fahim thought for a moment and nodded slightly. It's difficult, but can you give it a try? Gretel waited eagerly for him to start rubbing. Unexpectedly, the elder walked step by step to the ancient tree in the center of the open space, leaning on his wooden staff. He leaned against the ancient tree, hugged the wooden stick, and fell asleep quietly. Gretel. Teacher went to simulate in a dream. Anari Linge took 2 steps and said softly. Haven't you heard of the emerald dream of nature's servers? Greet shook his head quickly. If you have heard of it, you have heard of it, but it was just in your previous life. Of course, when he got this name, he didn't rule out that it was a translation problem. Well, as a nature servant, you can immerse yourself directly in nature and use your spirit to connect with nature's will. If you want to experiment, at least simulate it first. It is more convenient and cheaper than starting in reality. Wait, can the electron microscope also be simulated? Gretel was surprised. Anari Ling's face was full of reason. Of course, nature is all-encompassing, and your electrons and rays are also included in the category of nature. Wait, after the teacher has successfully simulated it in the emerald dream, he will start it in reality. Maybe, he can also bring. Shall we go in and take a look? Gretel. Elder, I want to learn this. Compared with having to build a laboratory, recruit people, and fiddle with instruments and equipment wherever you go, you can simulate the experiment to the best of your ability by sleeping under an old tree with an oak stick. How happy it is! Even experimental animals can be killed by hundreds or thousands less. Can you teach me this? Absolutely. The elves have always selected nature servants based on whether they can enter the emerald dream. You don't know it yet? Really, humans have lost too much knowledge here. If you don't learn the emerald dream, teacher, I won't let you go. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geolan 2020. Chapter 1106. The Emerald Dream. It is a collection of spirituality in nature, floating on the upper level of the material world, and overlapping with the material world to a certain extent. It is the reflection of the entire world before it was transformed by intelligent creatures. Gretel expressed that he wanted to learn from the Emerald Dream, and Anari Ling would certainly not mind teaching him a little bit. In fact, regarding Greet's studies, Elder Fahim had already talked with his disciples, and his attitude was very clear. Whatever Gretel wants to learn, as long as it is in line with his current level and academic ability, teach him. This child is half elf blood after all. Even if he does not become an elf, it is a good thing if he can lean more towards us. I understand, teacher. Anari Linge nodded without hesitation. And Gretel is so generous. His own original magic, he gives papers when he says it, and teaches when he teaches. Then we can't be stingy. Teacher, don't worry, whatever he wants to learn, teacher, I will definitely teach him. Anari Ling soon regretted it. Elder Fahim held the wooden staff and sank into meditation, and she took over the responsibility of teaching Gretel. However, this job is not that easy. It's easy to enter the Emerald Dream. Meditate, expand your consciousness, and resonate with nature. Then, rise with the spirituality of nature. As you rise, you can see the original appearance of nature. Come on, give it a try. Greet followed her guidance and slowly sank into meditation. Expand your spiritual power, resonate with nature, and feel the surrounding ancient trees, woods, grass, and forests. And then, up, up. Greet tried to raise his perspective, just like being enveloped by the will of the world and rising every time he advanced. Rise, rise, see the dots of light below. So few. A big star, a big star, a big star, one after another. It looks like a poor myopic eye looking up at the sky in an environment with severe light pollution can only see a few pitiful stars. The brightness is indeed bright, but the quantity is tragically small. The sea of light that Greet and I overlooked when meditating in Nevis was completely different. Your method is wrong. Try again. In the spiritual world, Annery Ling's stern voice sounded to stop him. Greet was startled and broke out of his meditative state. When he opened his eyes, he saw Annery Ling's slender eyebrows tangled into a small ball. That's not the case. Your purpose is to find the original appearance of nature, not to maximize your spirituality. Greet was at a loss. But Lin Ge said that his method was wrong, and he had to start over. The second time, spiritual power unfolds, communicating with the surrounding nature, allowing spirituality to gradually rise. While rising, I silently recite. The original appearance, the original appearance, the original appearance of nature. A bright green light unfolded before his eyes. Densely packed and overwhelming. Huge, can be said to be spectacular leaves, one as tall as several of his people, intertwined with each other, covering the sky above Gretel's head. In the distance, an earth-shattering beast roar came. Gretel followed the sound and looked in the distance, seeing a dragon beast the size of Cyrilla's body, running leisurely among the green plants, and tearing off a large bunch of leaves as soon as he lowered his head. The tiger with a shoulder height more than twice its own opened its huge mouth, and its long fangs pierced into the body of the dragon beast, tearing off a large piece of flesh and blood. The thick giant snake spread its wings that covered the sky, passed over his head, and plunged into the jungle. Gretel! Gretel! Stern shouts rolled across the sky like thunder. The sky and the earth shook, clouds and smoke billowed, the surrounding green leaves fell one by one, plants collapsed in rows, beasts ran around, and giant snakes disintegrated. Gretel was startled and opened his eyes suddenly. Gretel! Something went wrong in your meditation. Don't get lost in a wild direction. Gretel! I feel like I am not lost in the wild direction, I may be lost in the Cretaceous. After 2 consecutive failures, Annery Ling did not dare to let Gretel meditate on his own. She had no choice but to check her inventory and find out the standard 3-piece set for training young elves and guiding them into the Emerald Dream. Medicinal solutions for bathing and medicinal wine for taking. Magic circle to assist meditation. Magical incense to aid meditation. It's pressing, it's extraction, it's grinding, it's soaking. Gretel is already an adult, and unlike those half-grown teenagers, children, or even young elves, the amount of medicine he uses must be doubled several times. She dug out a large and heavy bathtub, with solid wood and a green color. As soon as she put it in, a faint fragrance wafted out. Looking at the size, it wouldn't be a problem for Gretel to stand upright inside. Rolling up his sleeves, he poured more than half a bucket of viscous sap into it, then threw various potions, powders, fruits, and even the blood of monsters into it, stirring constantly. The viscous sap gradually became as clear as water. Cirilla curiously approached it, stretched out her hand to touch it, and immediately withdrew her hand. It's so cold. It's for soaking. Soaking in it and then drinking special medicinal wine will help you enter the Emerald Dream under the guidance of magic. Annery Ling kept singing, mixing medicinal wine and drawing magic circles. Magic powder, magic ink, animal blood, mercury, and various materials flew up under her hands, forming a huge magic circle. With a final wave of his hand, the tub flew up out of thin air and landed in the center of the magic circle. Get in. Do you want to take off your clothes? Gretel looked left and right, and decided that if he wanted to take off his clothes, he would cast an invisibility spell on himself first. No, invisibility is not reliable. Cyrilla's eyes can see through a lot of invisibility. Or is the hidden mist technique more reliable? Or, get an ice wall to buckle it and physically cover it? Just go and change into the lightest and most fitting clothes. No, wait. Wear this one, Anari Linge threw out a robe. This is a fabric with natural affinity. If you wear it, it will not prevent you from receiving magical assistance. Greed went to change clothes honestly, climbed into the tub, and drank the medicinal wine sent by Anari Ling. He couldn't care less about the sore throat. He hugged his knees and sat in the barrel, listening to Lin Ji's sonorous and powerful singing, and slowly fell into meditation. The power of medicinal wine inspired his spirit. The surrounding magic circles, magic incense, and even the medicinal wine in the barrel created an invisible whirlwind belonging to the spiritual world around Greed. The environment, atmosphere, magic, everything, prompted his spirituality to open to nature and connect with the ancient world that belonged to the collective dream of nature's servants. Gretel. Anari Ling was furious. With her guidance and all the preparations, Gretel stopped meditating this time and slept instead. Forget about just sleeping, the precious liquid in the barrel and all the magical power were sucked into his body like a whale sucking water. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. Thanks to @bookfriend 2020917215614887 for the reward of 500 starting coins. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Jialan 2020. Chapter 1107. Gretel. Anari Ling was both angry and funny. She spent decades saving these sap, potions, powders, fruits, flowers, and minerals bit by bit. Some fertile forest and Yuzong forest are not productive, and they have to be exchanged with other elves. Originally, it was intended to be used to enlighten a native and be accepted as his student. Now, it's okay to use it on Gretel. After all, he is also a cub with half of his own blood. He is so talented and willing to help patients wholeheartedly. As long as he can learn it, it's not a waste if it's all for him to use. Snoring, snoring. The problem now is that instead of being led into the emerald dream, Greed curled up and snored in the tub. It was so sweet and so regular that people couldn't bear to interrupt him. Moreover, with his gentle snoring, the magic fluctuations in the bathtub, the magic fluctuations caused by the surrounding magic array and magic incense, became lower and lower, lower and lower. Just watching, he absorbed it all. Is your body a sponge? Such powerful magical power, you can swallow it? Or, your growth in the human world was simply abnormal, with too many parts missing. After arriving in the fertile forest and receiving the orthodox training and resource support from the elves, I eagerly absorbed the magical power. Anari Linge thought this, and began to feel calmer, and a little more compassion arose. She breathed evenly, stretched out her mental strength, and felt Gretel's state. Entering the emerald dream, probably not. If you really enter this dreamland, your whole body should be in a very peaceful state, but your mental activities are very intense. Moreover, Emerald Dream's mental state is very unique. It is both peaceful and intense, both vast and subtle. It was like a man with bare hands, no warrior strength, and no magic power, standing on the top of a tall tree, overlooking the endless plain below. Eagles fly by, wild beasts run, ligers roar. The comfortable feeling of being integrated into nature and the trembling feeling that penetrates into the bone marrow emerge at the same time, which will leave a very deep impression on those who enter the emerald dream for the first time. If the person who guides him notices this reaction, he can judge that he has indeed succeeded in falling into a dream. And Gretel obviously failed to enter the emerald dream. Anari Ling shook his head and could only sit aside and wait. There is no way. Things like the emerald dream are very personal, and everyone has their own dream. She is only level 16 and can only be guided from the outside. If you want to drag Gretel into your emerald dream, that is something only a legend can do, so her teacher must come. How about it? Suddenly a leisurely voice came from the side. Anneri Linge came back to her senses and saw that the teacher had walked to her side at some point, looking in Greet's direction and smiling. Anneri Ling sighed. This little guy can't be taught no matter how hard he teaches. After complaining one after another, Elder Fahim shook his head and laughed. Smiling and sighing. This little guy is really stubborn. You have never guided a mature nature priest before, so you don't know where to intervene. No wonder it will make him go astray. Well, it's okay. I will guide you again later. Gretel slept comfortably until dark. I slept until the magical power of the medicinal liquid in the bathtub was absorbed completely, and the medicinal properties of the medicinal wine wore off. I felt a little cold while huddled in the water, and then I opened my eyes and crawled out. Standing on the ground, I feel like my whole body has gained 2 pounds and lost 2 pounds. I really want to burp. Oh. Awake. A red old face came over. Greet lowered his head, raised his head, and slowly raised his gaze. He was sleeping so comfortably. He was still a little confused when he woke up. Old. The plan you provided is somewhat feasible, but it needs to be verified in reality. Also, those bacteria and cells need to be observed in reality. In the emerald dream, it is difficult to draw correct conclusions. Gretel's eyes lit up. Very good. As long as it works. It would be great to be able to conduct simulation research there. Elder, that emerald dream, right? I know, and I will teach you. Elder Fahim stroked his beard and looked at Greet with a smile. Looking up and down, it's like looking at a newly obtained cub taken from the den of a high-level monster. You, on the other hand, have just slept so much and absorbed so much magical power. Have you made any progress in your physical fitness? Come on, let me check. How to detect it? Turn on Detect Magic to measure magic strength. Or do I need to draw a drop of blood? Or, give him a target and let him cast spells in one breath until they are exhausted? Gretel looked at him expectantly. Elder Fahim walked around him for a half circle, turned back, and walked around for another half circle. It stands to reason that absorbing the guiding power of the emerald dream will enhance your natural affinity. Come on, can you try the transformation technique and see if the transformation is smoother than before? Greet activated the spell as he said. He threw his body down, landed on all fours, and turned into a black bear, running around the elder twice. The elder stroked his beard, nodded first, then shook his head. The speed has not become faster, and the body has not become larger. Come on, try casting a spell in the transformed state. Gretel swung his claws, and swung his claws again. Fingernails cut through the wind, and fell heavily to the ground again and again, but they couldn't even cause the slightest spell fluctuation. Elder Fahim sighed. Here, let's try to transform into a leopard. No, you don't need to transform into a human form and then transform into a leopard. Switching from bear form to leopard form should be very smooth. However, this kind of guidance was of no use. Greet stood there and tried hard several times. The muscles on the black bear's back rippled and trembled, and there was no splash. Finally, he returned to his human form and turned into a leopard again, stumbling and running with 1 foot high and 1 foot low. This natural affinity ability has not increased either. The elder wrapped his fingers around his beard, curled it up, then put it down, rolled it up again, and put it down again, searching his intestines and stomach. When he raised his eyes, he saw Gretel changing back to his original form, secretly looking at Sirara, and then quickly looking away. Sirara also looked at him secretly, and when she saw Gretel looking over, she quickly straightened her face. What happened to you guys? The little silver dragon and the little cub looked east and west, neither of them willing to speak. Bernard, who came out of the laboratory with clothes in his arms and replaced Greet, looked left and right, and suddenly interjected. The boss can also transform into a dragon. Real. Elder Fahim and Anari Ling's eyes lit up at the same time. Gretel was silent for a moment and shook his head slightly. Lack of strength, too small, something almost went wrong. As he spoke, he looked towards the laboratory, his longing eyes still couldn't help but leak out. Dragon's eyes can see X-rays, special rays. If only I could have a safe look, just a look. Of course, the premise is to be safe. The first thing is to be safe, not to go wrong, not to become deformed and unable to return. Secondly, not to be hugged and rubbed by Cyrilla immediately after the transformation is completed. It's okay, I'll take care of you. Elder Fahim took care of everything. Come on, try changing. Let me see how smoothly you can transform into a dragon. What are you afraid of if you leave me alone? Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Jialan 2020. Chapter 1108. Gretel is going to transform into a dragon, that's a big deal. Not only were Elder Fahim and Anari Ling attentive, but Cyrilla was eager to try it. Even Ms. Jasmine and her husband, who lived at the outpost and received elf training, also put down their work and crowded over to watch. Greet calmed down and breathed evenly. Wearing the old robe Lin Ge lent him, he walked barefoot to the center of the grass. Inhale and exhale, remember the last time you transformed into a dragon, and slowly adjust your state. His gaze passed over everyone standing in front of the grass from left to right, especially stopping for a moment on Cyrilla. Cyrilla's eyes were blazing, and her fingers opened and closed, then closed and opened again. The arms are outstretched and the toes are raised, as if he wants to rush over at any time. Don't come over here. If you don't see me turning into a dragon, the first thing you do is hug me and rub me. Greet tried hard to mentally build himself up. I was level 10 last time and now I am level 11, and my magic power has increased quite a bit. Last time, my target was an adult dragon at first, but then it shrunk when I couldn't hold on anymore, wasting too much strength. This time, I will never make the same mistake as last time. In the spell list of the Tower of Babel, there is a basic dragon form at level 3, which can turn into a cat-sized pseudo-dragon, and a secondary dragon form at level 6, which can turn into a strong young dragon. I am now at level 11. I can calmly cast 6 level spells and transform into a 10-meter-long young dragon. It is no problem at all. Greet tried hard to comfort himself and adjust his condition. Finally, the magic light surged up and enveloped him tightly. Then, it surged outward, surged. The bright silver light illuminated Cyrilla's surprised face. The silver dragon girl opened her arms, kicked off her toes, and was about to pounce, but Anari Lin Ge grabbed her. Wait. He hasn't finished transforming yet. Just like that, the silver light surged to the limit and suddenly shrank inward. Everyone narrowed their eyes slightly to avoid the burst of bright light. When they opened their eyes again, a silver dragon with a length of more than 6 meters raised its head and flapped its wings vigorously. Ah! Cyrilla's footsteps suddenly stopped. From her hair to her toes, every inch of the silver dragon girl was filled with disappointment. She was about to collapse on the spot. Why is it so big? I can't hold him at all. I can't hold it with both hands. I can't rub it, I can't rub my forehead, I can't touch the scales. How great was the cat-sized version from before? Why does it have to be so big? Bad Gretel. Greet must not want her to hug him anymore, so he did it on purpose. Why are you so young? Anari Ling also frowned. A normal juvenile dragon should be more than 10 meters long, more than 12 meters with its tail, and its wingspan should also be more than 10 meters. The 6-meter-long silver dragon that Gretel transformed into can only be regarded as a baby dragon, and it is still far from a juvenile dragon. It's okay, it's getting better among the people, only Elder Fahim expressed satisfaction. The old man squinted his eyes and looked Greet up and down, his eyes almost emitting invisible light. You are transforming after Cyrilla, right? Are you transforming into an adult silver dragon from the beginning? Look, the shape of his dragon horns, the thorns on his back, and the color of his scales are all those of an adult dragon. Feature. He gave guidance and taught his disciples in every way. After teaching, he stood in front of Gretel again. Gretel, give it a try and see if you can speak. Can you cast spells? Woo ng dash. Gretel raised his head, lowered his head, flapped his wings and tried to make a sound, and finally only let out a long dragon roar. Elder Fahim smiled and shook his head. Don't worry, don't worry. If you practice more in the future, you'll be able to speak normally. How do you feel now? Gretel tilted his head to the left and to the right. It flapped its wings and whirled around on the ground. Looking at him like that, he was obviously pretending to be talking, but he couldn't say even a single sentence, and he looked very anxious. To be honest, if it were a baby dragon the size of a cat, it would still be pitiful and cute looking like this, but a 6-meter-long dragon. Cyrilla pouted and twisted her face without speaking. Anari Linji raised his hands to cover his eyes, completely unable to watch. Even Appa, who was watching, snorted, swung his tail and stepped back. What a shame. I really don't want to admit that this is my boss. At this time, the only one who is willing to come closer and dares to stand closer is the legendary master. Elder Fahim had to stop Gretel. If you can't speak, just write. Can you control your claws? Just pull out a piece of grass and write on the dirt. If you wander around like this, you will do more damage to the grass. Greet finally stopped. Looking left and right, I walked to the edge of the grass, a patch of soft dirt. He stretched out his paw and wrote on it. X-ray. Look. You want to see X-rays? You need to put up that tube and try. Can the dragon's eyes see X-rays? Elder Fahim guessed as he watched. Seeing Gretel nodding vigorously, he coughed and called to the silver dragon girl. Celera, do you have Greet's experimental equipment here? Set up the X-ray tube and repeat the experiment. I don't want it, Cyrilla pressed down on the space bag. Turning around, he turned his head, leaving Greet with a high chin. He did it on purpose. He became so big. Humph. Even if Elder Fahim had heard Ashuej talk about that public case, he could only press the corners of his mouth desperately and pretend to know nothing. Standing by and watching, Gretel moved closer to Sarah, whined, and pushed her head into Sarah's shoulders. Don't pull me. Don't push me, the silver dragon girl tried her best to keep a straight face, turned her head, and looked like I'm very angry. You've become like this. You did it on purpose. Either you become as big as me and can fly with me, or you don't become so big. I'm not happy with this size. Woo woo woo. Don't be so big next time. Be smaller. Woo. Nod, shake, arch, rub, slap. After struggling for a while, Cyrilla finally turned cloudy and took out the set of vacuum tubes. Elder Fahim set it up himself, attracting a thunderbolt that hit the electrode outside the vacuum tube. The moment the thunder landed, Gretel, who had been lying in front of the vacuum tube and staring at the tube without blinking, opened his eyes wide in an instant. He held his breath, opened his scales slightly, and the thorns around his ears and on his back stood straight. He saw it. He saw it. After the thunder fell on the electrode and the cathode ray hit the metal sheet, there was a beautiful beam of brilliance that I had never seen before. It turns out that in the dragon's field of vision, the world is like this. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. Thanks to @YahwehDengzian233 for the reward of 300 starting coins. Thanks to @bookfriend120119180412667 for the reward of 100 starting coins. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 1109. Gretel was lying on the forest clearing, staring at the vacuum tube without saying a word, the membranes on the side of his ears and the thorns on his back trembling slightly. X-rays seen with the naked eye actually look like this. What about alpha rays? What about beta rays? What about gamma rays? What does the light generated by magic items and magical creatures look like under detection magic? I really want to take a closer look with the eyes of a dragon. He stared at the vacuum tube, so mesmerized that time passed by. Suddenly, the whole person felt empty, and the perspective suddenly changed. When he opened his eyes again, he had transformed back into his human form and collapsed on the ground covered in sweat. Gretel. Cyrilla rushed up to help him. How are you? Are you feeling uncomfortable? Are you feeling uncomfortable? Don't pull me, I want to vomit. Greet closed his eyes, feeling that his vision was getting dark, his body was sweating in waves, and the world was spinning. Cyrilla didn't dare to move him, so she could only squat next to him and hold his shoulders, letting him lean on her, and looked at Elder Fahim for help. Elder. It's okay. You've overexhausted yourself. Just take a rest. The elder went back to his hut to tinker with things, then brought out a cup of light green tree sap and asked Gretel to drink it. Although his transformed form is small, he is still an adult dragon, which consumes too much magic power. Just become smaller next time. Being smaller consumes less energy, and he can also enter the laboratory, killing two birds with one stone. Gretel nodded weakly. The elder looked at him with a smile, then at Cyrilla, and the corners of his mouth curved upward a little. By the way, if you just want to observe from the perspective of a dragon, next time you should focus on learning some transformation techniques and turn your eyes into vertical pupils. This consumes less money. At your current level, as long as you are proficient, you can last for a day. It doesn't matter. That's really great. Gretel slowly sipped the glass of tree sap one sip at a time. Feeling that his empty body finally had some strength, he stood up holding Cyrilla's hand. He glanced at the vacuum tube with nostalgia, sighed, and then looked at the distant secret realm of elves. If his guess is correct and the bad situation in the elf secret realm is related to nuclear radiation, then when he becomes proficient in dragon transformation, maybe he can go to the edge of the contaminated area to take a look. Of course, I was just on the edge of the polluted area, just looking at it from a distance. Make sure there is indeed nuclear radiation, and then take corresponding measures. It is estimated that the magicians in the council, especially the plastic magicians like the teacher, and the masters of the transformation system, should have a high interest in things like nuclear radiation and new radioactive elements. Of course, this is all planning. Greet slowly fell asleep with beautiful thoughts in mind. Hurry up and recuperate. Tomorrow, you will continue to study healing techniques and learn about the Emerald Dream. There are still many things to do. With goals, there is motivation. The next day, Elder Fahim personally took action to guide Gretel into the Emerald Dream. This time, the process went smoothly without any problems. Greet opened her eyes in meditation. What he saw was a majestic mountain range. He was standing on the top of the mountain, looking down. With human eyesight, it would have been difficult to see that far away, but now he raised his eyes and looked into the distance, and the scene on the ground was clearly visible. On the left side of the mountain range, the moist warm wind blows in the face and rises along the high mountains. Warm broad-leaved woodlands, lush mixed coniferous and broad-leaved forests, steep and tall coniferous woodlands, shrublands, and alpine meadows all the way up, intertwined and distinct. In front of the mountains, endless prairie stretches to the horizon. Atmospheric circulation swirls, winds carrying water vapor come and go, and dry and rainy seasons alternate continuously. The animals on the grassland run back and forth with the rain. On the right side of the mountain range, there is the richest and most prosperous rainforest, with green waves rolling and spreading outward. In the dense jungle, the river surges forward and merges into the main trunk in all directions. By the time it reaches the lower reaches, it is as wide as the ocean. Gretel spread out his arms on the cliff, took a deep breath, and tried his best to stretch his body and mind. Is this the Emerald Dream? Is this what the earth should have been like before humans arrived? No wonder the elders tried their best to make him learn. Immersed in such an environment, every strand of spiritual power is cheering, vibrating, and greedily sucking in the power of nature. One emerald dream every night, the growth of spiritual power can be said to be 1,000 miles. While he was stretching his spirit wantonly, the ground beneath his feet suddenly shook violently. Gretel opened his eyes in shock and saw a dazzling bright light bursting deep in the rainforest. In a moment, the beam of light reached across the sky and the earth, soaring straight into the sky. Even in the Emerald Dream, even though it was an unknown distance away, this scene took Gretel's breath away instantly. A powerful shock wave pushed outwards, turning green leaves, branches, flowers, and vines into ashes and debris on the spot. Powerful monsters roared up to the sky, giant feathered snakes, colorful birds, and even tigers and monkeys all rose into the sky one by one, trying their best to resist. However, the birds and beasts near the center of the explosion dispersed into smoke and dust after only holding on for a few breaths. The birds and beasts that were slightly farther away fled in panic, but one by one they were burned to black, their skin was charred and their flesh was rotten, and they fell down with miserable screams. Finally, a large piece of scorched earth was left in the center of the emerald green rainforest. Grass and trees are carbonized, animals are dying, and there is no life in sight in the huge forest. Only wisps of air currents are still rising and falling, twisting and devouring the life of this land. The wounds of the earth await healing. The loss of nature is waiting to be made up for. The twisted world needs to be corrected. Gretel took a step toward the center of the rainforest. The next moment, the Emerald Dream was turbulent, and Gretel slowly opened his eyes with a cold sweat. How about it? How about it? Several voices asked at the same time. Elder Fahim squatted in front, staring into his eyes without blinking. He didn't know how long he kept this posture. Sarala leaned close to the edge, even closer to Gretel, and couldn't wait to hold his hand. Did you make it? It should be successful. Gretel slowly recalled everything he saw in the Emerald Dream and told them word for word. Upon hearing the extent of what he felt, the elder's eyebrows were beaming with joy. Hearing that he was standing on the top of the mountain and could see details so far away, the elder twirled his beard and nodded repeatedly. Hearing the bright light exploding in the rainforest, the elder sighed, his brows filled with sadness. Every worshipper of nature who enters the Emerald Dream will feel the mission of nature, to take care of nature and repair nature. The more difficult and dangerous the trauma is, the greater the achievements will be after repair. But Gretel, what you feel, it's actually this period of history. I don't know if I have harmed you by guiding you into your dreams so close to the secret realm. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 1110. Although we have witnessed the natural trauma and foreseen the grand tasks, we still have to eat one bite at a time and live day by day. Anyway, in the words of Elder Fahim, it will take you a long time to travel through the mountains and rivers in the Emerald Dream and absorb the power within. While walking, feel nature and soothe the plants and animals in the Emerald Dream. Such a big place, mountains, grasslands, rainforests, step by step in the dream, how can it not take dozens or hundreds of years? As your level increases and you gain more experience, you can start to soothe natural wounds. The elder looked at Greet with a soft look. According to the situation you described, legend shouldn't be a problem to complete this mission. Maybe, you can still have some energy left to rush to legend level 2 or level 3. I'll try my best. Gretel nodded vigorously. Legend is still far away from him. From apprentice to level 11, and from level 11 to legend, considering the numbers alone, half of the journey has to be traveled. If you take the difficulty into account, it's almost 3/4, or even 4/5, or even further away. Many magicians never even get there in their lifetime. Gretel did not consider the problem of walking until he could not walk. He eagerly absorbed the power of nature and felt the growth of his spiritual power. Observe every leaf, observe every flower, even penetrate spiritual power into the soil, observe every tree root. The more I observe, I feel that my mental strength has also increased a lot. Not only does the total amount increase, but the intensity increases, and the application becomes more delicate. At the very least, this time he was fully armed, and when he probed the devil tiger, he was able to penetrate beyond the muscle layer and penetrate deep into the internal organs. This is not to say that Gretel's mental strength has made great progress, surpassing the 11th level of strength, growing to 13th, 14th level, and even approaching the height of 15th level. Instead, after Gretel worked hard to exercise his mental power, he saw something different. Greet lay on the grass and stared at the devil tiger. The devil tiger, which is more than 3 meters long and looks thin due to illness, with ribs protruding one by one, its whole body is tense, and its claws are tightly digging into the grass. He knew that it was Gretel, and he also knew that it was the half-elf who had been helping him and trying his best to cure him. However, lying in front of him was a dragon. A dragon. Even if the dragon is only 1/3 as long as him, it is still a dragon. When looking at him with scorching eyes, the sense of coercion made him tremble from instinct. In fact, if he hadn't still had reason and Elder Fahim was watching from the side, he might have slapped him down with one paw. Quiet. Gretel raised his paw and pressed it down. He quickly learned the skill of speaking in dragon form, which is much easier than speaking in bear form. While giving the order, he squinted his eyes and observed carefully. In Silver Dragon's field of vision, the demon tiger's body was filled with a layer of power, thin and dense, constantly pulsating against its fur. Rise, fall, gather, disperse. If you can pinpoint every trough and pinpoint every point where the power of that layer weakens, does that mean you can easily penetrate your mental power without wasting so much? Greet thought like this, released his mental power, and carefully attached himself to the demon tiger's body. The filaments of mental power that were much more delicate and stronger than before were constantly trembling and swaying, gradually integrating with the fluctuations on the demon tiger's body, and then seeping inwards. Well done. Elder Fahim stroked his beard, nodded slightly, and narrowed his eyes into slits with a smile. This is also the method he often uses when detecting targets. It consumes less, has high returns, and is not easy to cause pain to the target. Unfortunately, this method can only be realized by oneself and cannot be taught. Even if he taught it, the intensity of Gretel's mental power and the delicacy of his control were not up to par, and he couldn't even feel the fluctuations on the demon tiger's body, so what's the use? Fortunately, Greet realized it himself. Greet's mental power penetrated into the demon tiger's body like a drizzle, searching for the identified tumor spot. Well, it's here, It's here, it's here. Then it extends forward, wrapping the entire tumor and spreading to every corner. Okay, no problem. If you really want to treat it, with your current mental strength, you should be able to kill it directly through the body surface. He changed back to his human form, stood up straight, gestured to Elder Fahim and the demon tiger, and explained his results. Mr. Ranat, now, if you wish, I can try some hands-on treatment. The demon tiger named Ranat roared low and nodded. The elder looked back at the ancient tree and immediately asked, "Do you need dialysis?" Gretel nodded, then shook his head. "You need to prepare for dialysis. But before that, if Ranat agrees, I would like to try a less damaging method. For example, use detoxification or similar spells to remove the damaged cells in your body." The demon tiger raised his head and glanced at the ancient tree, a trace of fear flashing in his eyes. Although it is very powerful, the ancient tree is even more powerful. Stretch out a branch and string it on top, and then eat it slowly without any embarrassment. Therefore, if there is another way to treat its symptoms without letting the ancient tree interfere, that would be the best. Even if it fails, there will still be ancient trees in the end. Ranat growled, lay down, and closed his eyes. Gretel adjusted his breathing, leaned on the oak staff, and began to communicate hard. "Help me! Help me! Remember my operation process, remember the fluctuations on the opponent's body, help my mental power penetrate. Even if you haven't learned how to do dialysis yet, remember that once treatment begins, you will need help removing something." His mental power slowly opened and penetrated, soaking into the fur, into the muscles, and into the internal organs. Wrap the previously detected tumor and activate the spell model. Kill. Maximum effort. In the dark, a subtle explosion sounded in my ears. Beep, 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 beep. Countless cancer cells died on the spot, their cell membranes were broken, and their cytoplasm flowed out. Greet quickly threw out a treatment technique to seal off the blood vessels near the tumor. Immediately afterwards, the detoxification technique was activated. Detoxification. Detoxification, since it can remove mercury from the human body, can remove lead and cadmium from the human body, and can remove various harmful substances from the human body. Then, other harmful substances in his cognition should be removed as well. For example, his mental power focuses on a small tumor area, and all the cell contents flowing out of the cells. All are harmful and all need to be removed. Brush it down for me. There are always more solutions than difficulties. Maybe you can do it by changing your thinking. Ouch. The roar of the tiger creates wind that shakes the treetops. Ranat stretched out his forepaws and stood up energetically, the fur on his body undulating like satin. It walked over and nudged Gretel affectionately with its head, almost knocking him to the ground. Ouch. Don't come over here. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. Thanks to Mengbing for the 1,500 starting coins. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Jialan 2020. Chapter 1111. Chapter 1108 Gretel, the medical fee you gave me was fake, right? If the first treatment experiment is successful, then there can be a second and third time. Although there were more than one or two tumors like masses and nodules on Demon Tiger Ranat's body. But for Greet, if you find one tumor, you can treat one tumor, if you find two tumors, you can eliminate two tumors. So tired. Gretel collapsed on the grass, his limbs stretched out, sweat everywhere from his forehead to his back. Every time he casts a spell, he needs to wear a full set of amplifying equipment and stack the buff to the highest level so that his mental power can penetrate into the demon tiger's body. This feeling is like a 10-year-old child trying his best to lift a 40-pound axe. My legs are shaking, my arms are shaking, and I still have to use the sharp edge of this axe to carve exquisite patterns on the dome. Every time you complete it, you must concentrate to the maximum extent, squeeze out your physical strength, and stretch yourself into a fully stretched strong bow. After completing 3 treatments and 5 treatments in one breath, although the spells were not exhausted yet, my spirit was exhausted to the limit. Greet, are you okay? Are you okay? Do you want to eat something? Do you want to drink some of that tree sap? Sirara was circling around. She also wanted to work hard to learn this spell and help Gretel share the burden, but it was always almost meaningless to release it. Or, if a spell is cast, the target animal will not move at all. What should be sick is still sick, what should be wilting is still wilting, what should be a tumor is still there. Or, use a spell. Ah! Great! Exploded, exploded, exploded. Gretel didn't explode, the rabbit exploded. Gretel staggered over to see what was going on. At a glance, the rabbit is so miserable. A big bloody hole burst out from his abdomen. Red, white, and yellow, flowing all over the place. The rabbit is not dead yet. It is kicking its legs feebly and can no longer scream. Gretel took a tube of samples, took a look under the microscope, and immediately added his forehead with his hand. This is killing all the normal cells, this rabbit is hopeless. Let's roast it and eat it. No, the rabbit whose normal cells have exploded has no value in roasting. Find a place to bury it. Add some fertilizer to the plants. Alas, you can't blame Cyrilla. The main problem was that the person who taught it had a problem. The morphological characteristics of cancer cells could not be seen clearly under a light microscope, and he did not dare to just draw a picture and let Cyrilla practice according to it. The question now is, either he piles up enough cases to confirm that the characteristics of the cancer cells he has identified so far can be used for treatment. Or, we have to wait until Elder Fahim has gained enough in the Emerald Dream to make an electron microscope. The latter relies on the speed of Elder Fahim. As for the former, Greet closed her eyes and took a nap, recharged her batteries in the Emerald Dream, and jumped up energetically. Come again. On the first day, on the second day, treat the demon tiger Runot. On the third day, Gretel mustered up all his strength to scan the entire demon tiger from head to toe, in case there were any missing tumor cells that had not been killed. On the fourth day, a giant anteater stood in front of Greet. From the tongue to the throat, there were several lumps, one higher and one lower under the scales. An airy edge introduced from the side. Antilla has been responsible for eating the ants coming out of the contaminated area. The group of army ants you encountered before was the one she rushed over to eat. On the sixth day, a golden eagle. Gretel couldn't remember how many monsters he had healed. All I know is that outside his laboratory, he has built a separate hut specifically to store the gifts sent by the monsters. The antlers of the somber deer, the whole crocodile skin, the shiny emerald green scales of the iguana were sent by the demon tiger Ranat. A pile of colorful ores sent by the giant anteater Antilla, rummaged through the ant nest. Falcon, the golden eagle, sent, well, a group of live birds, scarlet ibis, rose-red agaron, pink flamingo, golden kana. So do I still have to keep them? Gretel was stunned. Beside, Ms. Jasmine and Anari Linji laughed together. Just let them find food on their own. Don't worry, there is a safe zone around the ancient tree. There will be no monsters hunting around here. They can live well. Alas, why would a nature minister find it difficult to raise some birds? Every time I feel that Greet, the nature minister, is a fake. So these little birds only belong to me in name. It's impossible for me to take them away, I can't sell them, I can't even pluck their feathers for decoration, give me a group of little birds, what are you doing? No matter what, even if it's a monster, you still need to pay for treatment. This is the rule. Anari Linji raised his arm and let the kana fly to the branch on its own, and picked up another one. A marmoset. This is a gift from the howler monkey leader. An adult marmoset is only as big as an adult's hand, with soft golden hair all over its body. Howler monkeys that are half as tall as a man want to catch them, and they must be caught one at a time. Anari Ling combed the marmoset's hair and immediately handed it over to Cyrilla. The silver dragon girl couldn't wait to take it. The marmoset stood in the palm of her hand, stretched out its two front paws, and hugged her thumb. This petite, well-behaved, and beautiful little monkey suddenly became her new favorite. Look, after we control these monsters, let's control the unicorns next. After we control the unicorns, what's next? What's next? They are indigenous people and elves. There are many strong indigenous people around, who are helping us curb the pollution in the secret realm. Many of them have suffered from various strange diseases and are very painful. There was no need to start treating the natives. When Greed finished treating the warcraft and was about to start treating the unicorn phyla, the nearby forest was already in a commotion. The unicorns came out of the forest in small groups and came to the forward post. A majestic male beast with silver blue lightning dancing on its horn. A female beast with a slender figure, white fur, and a slight golden light flowing from her horn. The horn is soft, the hooves are soft, and the fur is golden. The young unicorn is next to the mother. One family after another, one community after another, gathered in the forest outside the shade of the ancient trees, looming, looking around. Appa was so excited that he puffed out his nose and kept trying to get into the forest. Apa. You have to pay attention to your methods when pursuing a lady, Gretel hugged its neck. We haven't gotten to know each other yet, so don't chase them too closely as soon as we get started. Ang Appa has the same silver-white fur as them. There are great horns wider than them. He has a strong body and powerful healing spells. Apa is the deer king of Silver Moon Deer. Gretel. He let go of his hand and stood in front of Phyla. Look at Philadelphia, and then look at the adult unicorns accompanying her. First of all, let me explain that my treatment method is still under trial and cannot guarantee a complete cure or even a certain degree of safety. Even so, do you agree to my treatment for you? Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Jialan 2020. Chapter 1112. Spawn vines and take cell samples from tumors. Directional killing technique, directional detoxification technique, healing technique, 1 click 3 times. Targeted killing technique sweeps throughout the body to minimize the possibility of cancer cell metastasis. In full view of everyone, Gretel worked hard to treat the unicorn. The unicorns, monsters, and even the elves who came back after hearing the news formed a circle and stared at him attentively. I don't know how the elves sent the message, but the number of people who came back this time was particularly huge. In addition to Ash Moonsong, Unto Moonshadow, Malin Starflower, and others whom Gretel had already met when he first arrived, there were 2 or 3 times more people. Old and young, male and female, warriors or spellcasters, elves, and natives. One of them, a tall elf warrior with long hair tied high into a single ponytail, was particularly eye-catching. His cheeks and arms were covered with light green, emerald green, and dark green arabesques. Followed by a tall unicorn, with a pair of elf moon blades in the saddlebags on the unicorn's back. A small group of elves surrounded him respectfully. As soon as the elf warrior arrived, he strode forward and hugged Elder Fahim. Yudian, Elder Fahim slapped his back heavily. You're here. How are you doing? Not bad. Idian returned a strong hug and straightened up. Just as he was about to speak, he suddenly coughed violently. He held onto the unicorn's saddlebags and doubled over from coughing. Black-red blood splashed from his mouth and fell to the ground. The tender grass on the ground was instantly burned to black. It still doesn't look good. You should rest more. Elder Fahim frowned and shook his head. Idian coughed for a while, finally straightened up, exhaled heavily, and faced the direction of the elf secret realm. It's gotten a little better recently. I think, while I can still hold on, I'll go into the secret realm again and seal the contaminated core again. Don't think so wildly. We haven't reached that point yet. Elder Fahim shook his head heavily. He supported Idian and turned to Gretel's direction. Look, our new little cub is doing a pretty good job. As long as we heal a few more helpers, your burden will be much lighter and you won't have to work so hard. I am the strongest warrior here. If I don't fight hard, who will? Idian raised his head and smiled. He stopped Elder Fahim's persuasion with his eyes and moved slightly to the ground. The grass moved, the soil rolled, and a hole opened in the earth, rolling the contaminated soil several meters deep. I know my body. It's good if it can support it. If I want to become a legend, there is no hope. Instead of enduring it, I might as well try my best and share more of the burden for the children behind me. Anyway. His voice became deeper and deeper. As he spoke, he glanced back to the west, his eyes full of reluctance and nostalgia. Anyway, there will never be a shortage of legendary warriors on Yangju Island. If one falls, another one will rise up. Elder Fahim sighed and patted his arm. Stand side by side with him and look in Gretel's direction. Let's take a look at our little cub's work first. Maybe you will change your mind. Idian smiled lightly and did not refute. He watched Greet from a distance as he was busy cutting an opening in Phyla's body and trying to control the vines to grow in. He nodded and shook his head. The technique is still unfamiliar. It takes such a long time to summon a vine. The strength of the vine is also too weak. After all, it is a cub, or a cub that has not been trained by elves and grew up among humans. Magic, the intensity of magic is too low. With this level of magic, you need to wear a set of amplifying equipment. It's too weak, too weak. Is this considered a healing technique? What can a healing technique of this level cure? Besides, Philadelphia's disease can't just be treated with a healing technique, right? Elder Fahim smiled and stroked his beard, not feeling dissatisfied at all. Greet's healing technique doesn't look very good on the outside. It's clumsy and too low intensity. Any healer can pick out a lot of faults at will. However, his healing techniques are really effective. Well, don't say anything yet, let Idian watch by himself, wait for the results to come out, and see if he changes his mind. Greet worked from the upper abdomen to the lower abdomen of Unicorn Philadelphia, then from the lower abdomen to the limbs, and then to the head and neck. Up and down, one part passed by another, and more than once he entered the Emerald Dream to recover blood. You're quite skilled at entering the Emerald Dream. Idian stared at his every move and his expression improved a little. If you train well, you should be able to reach an Ares level without any problem. However, it will probably be difficult to reach your level. Maybe it's really difficult. Elder Fahim let out a long sigh. Without waiting for Idian to ask, he took the initiative to complain. Do you know what this child saw in the Emerald Dream, the trauma to nature and the earth? What is it? The elder raised his hand and pointed to the elven secret realm in the distance. Idian's expression changed several times, and he subconsciously touched the vines on his cheeks. With a stabbing sound, a small section of the vine turned into ashes and drifted away silently. Under the vines, the fair and beautiful cheeks immediately began to turn black. The elder hurriedly chanted a few words in a low voice, and the vine trunk quickly grew up to fill the empty space, and the elf warrior's complexion improved. He shook his head slightly. Here again. How many elves in the Emerald Dream have repaired this wound, only to be stuck before the legend and unable to advance? If not for this, my son would not have been taken to the Evermeet Island to grow up. Young elves can only stay away from the polluted secret realm and grow up on the Evermeet Island, so that the Emerald Dream will not be directly projected here. Even so, the elders must hide their distant history from them so that they can grow up safely and without worries. As for how many of the elves sent out were separated from each other, and how many couples were separated, that is another matter. They are willing to do anything for their children. Okay, the low chatter was suddenly interrupted by loud cheers. The two of them moved their eyes at the same time, and saw the unicorn Philadelphia standing up and neighing loudly. The golden light on her sharp horn flashed, and she ran around the grass with light steps. Where the hoof fell, grass grew, flowers bloomed, and tiny berries clung to the branches. It was obvious that the unicorn's illness was gone, and the powerful natural power was flowing through her body unhindered again. Not bad, Idion was slightly surprised. He quickly stepped forward to observe Phyla's condition closely. A series of spells were fired, covering the unicorn, checking her vitality. It's indeed cured. I said it's cured. Elder Fahim followed leisurely behind him. Seriously, you rest here for a few days and see how he is doing. If the effect is good, will you reconsider your plan? Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geolan 2020. Chapter 1113. Idion lived quietly at the outpost. Not only him, but also the monsters, unicorns, natives, and elves who came to watch, all came one after another, each trying their own way to settle down. Those who borrowed cabins stayed in cabins, those who built sheds, and those who lay down in the open air. It seems, as if, maybe, this new healer can cure many diseases. There are many treatments. Elder Fahim could not cure it before. If you throw away a single treatment, the disease will become worse. This new guy in the treatment, he can cure it? Then definitely stay here and take a look. If it is really safe, reliable, and effective, we will send all the patients at home here for treatment. Idion looked at it very carefully. After his 80th birthday, when he left Yangju Island, he was already a level 15 warrior and was praised as a rare genius in a century. Then, he came to Huge Forest, took over the senior soldiers, patrolled the forest and sealed off the contaminated areas. 100 years, 200 years, 300 years. Fight, fight, fight. The senior warriors grew old and died, and he also changed from an energetic young warrior to a calm and steady middle-aged man, the leader of the nearby forest guards. However, entering the contaminated area and entering the secret realm of elves again and again, although it allowed him to advance much faster than elves of the same age, it also accumulated too many injuries on his body. At first, healing techniques can be used to treat it, but gradually, natural breath must be used to restrain and comfort it. From now on, symbiotic vines must grow on the body to absorb the life force to the maximum extent and transfer the power of pollution out, so that the body will not decay so quickly. After struggling to advance to level 19, Udayan knew full well that he would never be able to advance further. The fate waiting for him is to be stationed here, fight until the last moment, and finally be buried in this fertile land. But now, it seems, there is a little hope. Idion watched silently, watching Gretel finish healing one unicorn, then checking the bodies of several unicorns, and finally, pushing a floating saucer, he quickly came over. Elder, his face was tired, and his forehead was wet with sweat, but he was very energetic and his eyes were bright. These are the cell samples collected during today's examination. How is your electron microscope study going? Can you take a look and see what characteristics these mutated cells have in common? Elder Fahim took the glass dishes with a flick of his hand. He introduced Greet with a smile. Come, this is Illidan Morrowind, a high-level warrior, level 19 according to human classification, the warrior leader of the nearby forest. Gretel, if you have any questions about combat, you can try to ask him for advice. I don't have any questions. Gretel subconsciously wanted to take a step back. As soon as he moved on his heels, he quickly stood still and saluted him seriously. I am Gretel Nordmark, healer and evocation mage. Salute you, great warrior. Thank you for your hard work. Yudian nodded lightly. His eyes glanced at Gretel, and he saw from his tense shoulders the tips of his toes that were tapping hard on the ground. He couldn't help laughing, and smiled slightly. What combat issues? This little cub is just that kind of standard spellcaster, and he doesn't bother to work hard at all in close combat. If he hadn't been concerned about politeness, he might have escaped far away at this time. If you, or your followers, have any questions about combat, you can always ask me for advice. I've been here at the outpost recently, giving them advice. It's not a problem at all. Thank you so much, Gretel breathed out a heartfelt thank you. Idian smiled at him, turned to Elder Fahim, and his eyes fell on the glass dish in his hand. What is this? Is there any use in studying this? Yes, it's just that I haven't fully understood it yet. Come on, come with me to rest for a while, and listen to what I tell you. The two walked leisurely towards the cabin. Not long after, a low-pitched discussion sounded in the elder's cabin. That's it? So. It turns out that cells look like this. Hey, can you help me see what my cells look like? Electronics? This is really not good, I can't feel it at all. Hey, when it comes to this kind of thing, you spellcasters are better. He stayed at the outpost for half a month, watching Gretel go from being a unicorn to being a native, and from being a native to being an elf. All day long, a small half of the time is spent casting spells, and the greater half of the time is spent doing all kinds of strange things. Measure body temperature, measure blood pressure, perform electrocardiogram, blood test. Have people stand upright or sideways, raise their head, lower their head, inhale, exhale, and use detection magic to shine back and forth. The person stood upright on the floating disc, and the floating disc slowly rotated, using detection magic to continuously illuminate. Oh, the rotation of the floating disc was caused by a dark gold skeleton squatting below and spinning the disc. Let people lie on the bed, smear the skin with oil, and touch it with your fingertips. Cut openings in human skin, let vines grow in, and then retreat out. After all, he is a child, and his healing skills are not strong enough, so he can only use this method to supplement his treatment, Yudian whispered to Elder Fahim. After hearing this comment, Greet could only shake his head and smile bitterly. It's not that the healing technique isn't strong enough. If it is strong enough, he can cover the whole body with a targeted killing technique, then apply a large healing technique, and then remove all the cell debris. Isn't it more convenient than just a little bit at a time? Of course, even if he had the ability, he wouldn't just throw spells around. Wouldn't it be better to save a little and treat a few more than to expand quickly? In any case, Greet's inspection and sampling gave Elder Fahim enough research materials. Half a month, 1 month, 1.5 months, the legendary elder who worked hard to rub the electron microscope finally achieved decisive results. I saw it! I saw it! Elder Fahim jumped up and ran out of the cabin. This old man, who has lived for thousands of years and has white beard and hair, runs with such vigor that even a young man can put to shame. Greet, I saw it! Those mutated, strange cysts that grow when you throw them in with treatment. The cells inside them look like this. He waved a piece of light and shadow casually. For a moment, Gretel opened his eyes wide and breathed rapidly. Cell. Cell membrane. Nucleus. Cytoskeleton. Although there are still some differences, it is already very similar to the electron microscope picture he saw in the book in his previous life. Sure enough, it is right to hug the legend's thigh tightly. His cells, his bacteria, his viruses, and many, many more studies can be carried out in depth. Look, this is the cell nucleus. He pointed to the details in the light and shadow, his voice trembling slightly. Normal cells, and this kind of abnormal cells, are their shapes very different? There are also cell membranes, and the surrounding parts, which look messy. If you grasp these characteristics, you can treat them. Okay. Let me try. Elder Fahim nodded heavily, his eyebrows moving. Yudian, come, let me try to treat you. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. Thanks to the Strong Sea Monster for the 5,000 starting coins reward.